Family. It's 7 p.m. on Tuesday, and this is your sister Erica with your Tuesday Sister Check In. As always, I like to start off first by saying good evening. I hope your day was well. I hope that you find yourself at this point satisfied with the way the first 2 days of your work week have gone. I hope you find yourself in a place where you are regrouping if you need to, readjusting to be able to move forward and enjoy the remainder of your week. How are you doing, family? How are you feeling today, right? How is your head? How is your heart? Right? Sometimes those things don't necessarily match, which is why I'm asking both, right? What's on your mind? What's on your heart tonight? I'm coming to you today to pick up on something I posted about on Monday as part of my Monday, my mental health moment. And it's really about trying to identify where you need to make adjustments. And it really came about because of my serious disdain for driving in traffic. So come on in, family, get comfortable sitting. I'm not sitting at my desk today. I'm sitting on my floor by my little African set here, my drum, which was a gift from my dad. Thank you, Papa. And I just say my ladies here, which were a gift from another coworker that I've had for quite some time. Got me a little pillow because I tell you way too much of my business. And today will be no different because things are always easier said than done. And I never want to give the impression that I'm giving you some type of advice or information that I don't also use, need to use, or haven't thought about using for myself. And so the title of tonight's just brief conversation is just that I hate traffic. And I really had to think about, why do I hate traffic? Now, I've hated traffic for a long time, but for whatever reason, Monday, was it this Monday? It may have been last week. I really was thinking about, like, what is it about traffic that really gets me so riled up? And one of the things that came to mind is that it's just entirely too much cooperation needed in traffic. Now, it's not so much that I have a problem with cooperation. I don't have a problem with collaboration. I have a problem when other folk don't do what they supposed to do, when they don't follow the rules, when they don't follow the laws, and particularly when I feel that other people's safety and well-being is not being taken into account because they need to be wherever it is that they need to be yesterday, but they're on the road today. Okay. And of course, that got me to thinking deeper. And this conversation is not just about traffic, it's not just about being on the road, but it's also really thinking about, how is that a metaphor for our life? How is that a metaphor for relationships? And to talk about just kind of four ways that you do need cooperation to drive in traffic, but also how you need those four things to also drive along your own road of life. Okay. Hey, Miss Naya, saying hello to you on Instagram. I'm going to finish this conversation on Facebook and YouTube channels. And so you'll need to go there to catch the rest of this, right? Catch me on YouTube at Your Sister Erica or Facebook at Erica Jefferson Rivers. So listen, y'all. There's a lot of cooperation that's needed in order to drive effectively, right, in traffic. When you're in traffic on the road, but also, like I said, when you're in this idea of this traffic around life, right? How do you go forward? How do you get to your destination safely and with some sanity? And so we're going to talk about just some things to consider and some metaphoric ways to think about driving, but then also ways that you can use cooperation in life. This is to help us with our own mental wellness. This is to help us with our relationships. This is to help us with our sanity, right? This is to help us to have a little bit of grace for those people that are traveling along the road next to us, right, in front of us and even those behind us, as well as to show ourselves a little bit of grace. If you happen to find yourself being similar to me, where you might not recognize yourself sometimes when you get behind that wheel, or not even really like, right, the person that you become, or like the person that you are once you get to your destination because you're so frazzled and upset and involved. All right. And so, as I mentioned, I tell you way too much of my business. So, I started a new job. I've been working now out of the house, right? So this is not a work from home. This is actually I need to leave the house, go somewhere, be somewhere at a specific time, Monday through Friday, and it involves me getting in my vehicle and driving to that location. Now, it really isn't that far, and it doesn't take that long when there is little traffic on the road. But when there are many people also who need to be at a specific space, at a specific time, all traveling along the same route, then of course you wind up getting some traffic on the road. And right, and think about that, that's also similar to life. And I had a moment last week where I was just exhausted for whatever reason in trying to be where I needed to be, still trying to be an entrepreneur, trying to learn a new job, trying to be a fantastic wife, trying to be a great woman. Trying to also fit in my own mental wellness and personal, my physical wellness was just a lot last week. And so last week on it was either Monday or Tuesday, and I don't remember what day now because I'm already moving forward. But there was just one of those days where the traffic just got the best of me heading home. There was an accident already on the highway. Before you can even get to the slowdown with the accident, there was another accident before it. And so it just took an extra amount of time and energy and patience to get home. And it wouldn't have been an issue if everyone was exhibiting the same amount of time and energy and patience. But no, of course, you have the people who need to be there faster than you. They need to get over into the next lane. This lane is not good for them. They're going to get into that lane, right? And they may or may not be signaling. They're likely not signaling. And it just got the best of me. And I was in such a horrible mood by the time I got home. And it took me a while to recover from it. Now, like I said, you already know that my background is in conflict resolution, and I am still a human having human experiences every day. So uh, I make apologies for when my human experience bounce bumps up against someone else having their human experience, and a lot of times that's my spouse because he's the person that's closest to me. But I am not trying to give the illusion at all that I have somehow arrived to some space, right, where these type of things don't affect me, right? I am working diligently and constantly on these things, and sometimes even through my best effort, right, I find myself at a place where the things around me, what's happening around me affects me. So let's talk about 4 ways, that you need cooperation, in order to drive in traffic, and then, like I said, connect that to just some wisdom that might be helpful in life. So one of the areas that you definitely need to use some cooperation is when you're merging. Now, I'm finding out that many of us done skipped that class. We completely missed the whole idea of how zippers work and that we're merging. Usually a zipper is going to be the most effective way in order to move into another lane. But cooperation is necessary in order for merging to happen smoothly without collisions. And again, the idea is that you should alternate merging into the lane so that one vehicle at a time is going. It's actually what's going to make the flow happen a lot easier. Now, how is that metaphorical when we think about life? I can think about times in my life where, you're trying to get to your destination, right? You're trying to get to your promotion. You're trying to get to your next best relationship. I'm trying to get to that relationship that's going to wind up being, my spouse, right? I'm trying to get to whatever the next thing is on my agenda, trying to get my degrees completed. And sometimes it feels like you're moving along just fine. And then you get to a space where other people, right, need to kind of come into your lane. And we don't like that. We don't like that. It can be really hard to really allow the space for others to come into your lane and for you to be able to be cooperative about how that's going to happen. Sometimes that looks like someone coming in and getting in the way of the relationships that you wanted to build. Sometimes that looks like someone coming in and maybe getting a promotion that you thought that you were, that you should have received. Sometimes that even looks like our emotions coming in and just like bombarding our little lane. Like I said, last week I was moving along just fine. The day at work was great. The morning commute was fine. I was tired. And something about that traffic in the afternoon, right? My perception, the way that I received it, the way that I reacted to it, right? It wasn't the traffic, it was my reaction to it, right? Meant that I wasn't merging well, right? I wasn't merging that experience or merging my perception with that experience well. And so, yeah, it created a collision. That's honestly what happened. I came home, collided with my husband, collided with myself, had to put myself in timeout. I just went to bed. I just like, I ate and I was like, I'm just going to go lay down because at that point, the collision had already happened. And it was a matter of being able to put things back together. Okay. So we need cooperation when we're merging in real traffic, but also when we find ourselves in spaces in life where something seems like it's just kind of coming into our lane, it's bumping up against us, and we want to try to allow some grace and some space to allow those things to happen without us necessarily having that collision or that reaction to it that causes difficulty. So the second thing is changing lanes. Now, look, I know everyone has heard the advice that, you stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. I stay in my lane. Yes, and okay. Now, when driving, we need to be aware of our surroundings. We need to use our turn signals, right? And the other things that we are taught to do so that people understand our intention to change lanes. Now, just because you put your turn signal on, don't mean that you're gonna be allowed into that lane. Just because someone else put their turn signal on doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna allow them into the lane that you're in. But you do need to think about, right, what is the impact of that? What is the impact of that? So as drivers, you should allow the lane change to occur safely and to occur smoothly. What prevents us from really wanting people to move into our lane and to change lanes? Now, of course, when we're driving on the road, we feel like that's one more car in the way of where I'm trying to go. That is one more person trying to get over here and mess up my flow. And it feels like that in life sometimes. Look, yes, you should stay in your own lane when it comes to minding your own business, unless, right? And there's almost always an unless there is a reason that you need to reach out to the people you care about in order to make sure that their safety and their wellness is being attended to, right? We think about some of the news stories about, about suicides and self-harm. Sometimes it's not so much that we don't care, it's just that we don't know when we should get involved in other people's business. And we tend to think that we need to just mind our own business, everybody else mind their own business, and everything will be fine. But sometimes we do need to mind other people's business a little bit, not to be petty, not to be, difficult, not to be a jerk, not to be nosy, but in order to help. And occasionally you do need some people in your lane. You need some people in your business when you aren't acting the way that you normally act, right? When you're not showing up the way that you normally show up, when you're not doing the self-care that you need to do, you definitely need someone to step in and say, "Hey sis, what's going on? Hey brother, how you been? How's your head? How's your heart? What's going on with you? How can I help?" And even when they say nothing, but their words don't match what you see, then you might need to take some steps to figure out how you get into that person's lane, how you get into their business. Okay. So, yes, stay in your lane, but when you need to be able to change lanes, you need to recognize that first and then also give some indication. So, how do you give a turn signal in life, right? You do that with your words and you do that with your actions. Hey, I'm going to give you a call. I'm just texting to check on you. Hey, I'm concerned about you and I'm letting you know now that I'm going to make some phone calls. I'm going to come pick you up and take you someplace. I'm going to recommend that you see a counselor or a therapist, right? That is how you put on that kind of turn signal, right? And what's the purpose of the turn signal, right? It's also to help you shift, to help that other person shift, right? From being in that lane of depression, perhaps, or being in that lane of anxiety, that being in that lane of having panic attacks. Okay. So identify when a lane change is necessary and then use some indications so that you can make the other person aware that, hey, I'm coming into your lane. I'm getting into your business because I care about you. All right, three. So 3 out of 4. Yielding. So when you're yielding to other traffic. Now, in situations where one driver has the right of way, right? This is not the same as changing lanes. It looks similar because you're entering into a lane that's already been occupied by other vehicles, but it's a little bit different because the person in that lane that you're trying to get into has the right of way and you've been given a sign that you need to yield. And so yielding is that you enter into that space as it is safe. Generally, you're still moving, you're not coming to a full stop, right? But when you're entering a highway from an on ramp, when you're yielding maybe at a four-way stop, right? Trying to determine who's supposed to go first, you want to make sure you're using cooperation so that you allow the driver with the right of way to proceed safely. Now, think about that. In this case, you really are giving over the control of moving forward to the person who has the right of way. Now, as I said at the beginning, it's a lot easier when everybody is following the rules. But on occasion, you're gonna get that person that come to the stop sign and they like do a little rolling stop. They're trying to hurry up and get there because they want to be the first one because they intending to go. They ain't intending to stop at all. They're already intending to go. And maybe in that instance, you really did have the right of way, but the other person is going. What are you gonna choose to do? Are you still gonna go forward? Are you gonna go ahead and move forward because you have the right of way and get into a collision? I, I remember a friend telling me, you can do that and you would be right, but you might be dead right. And that don't help you. I'd rather for you to be wrong and a lie. Right. I'd rather for you to be mad and a lie than to be dead right. Okay. And so how does this how, right, how does this relate to just experiences in life? Something yielding to authority. Hmm. Tell that to a Taurus. Yielding to authority. Tell that to a headstrong, firstborn female Taurus, right? That sometimes you need to be the one. I need to be the one that needs to step back and allow the person with the right of way to make some decisions to move both of us ahead safely, right? The idea of letting that a person who has the authority or who has the right of way to move along safely is not only for their benefit, but it's also for your benefit. And it can be really hard, particularly in intimate relationships, especially as I'm learning to be still learning to be a wife for a second time as after a failure the first time, right? And it is what it is. I learned what I needed to learn, but I was not the greatest wife the first time around. And this time I choose and desire to do things differently. And sometimes that means that I have to allow my husband to move forward in his God-given authority, and I have to yield. Doesn't take anything away from my gifts. It doesn't take anything away from my voice when it is done well, right? He's not telling me, "Oh, you stop." You know? It's just yield. Imma go first, and then I need you to come up behind me. Ooh, so we can get some things done, E. And on time and at other times, right, I'm the one with the right of way. And I move forward and then he comes in behind me. Okay. And so that's in intimate relationships. That might also be the case when you think about your work relationships, right? Who do you report to? And I've reported to some idiots in my life. I'm not going to say any names. I've reported to some folks who have been called manager and leader and other titles where I needed to yield to them, but I didn't hold them in the highest esteem. What I would learned from a good friend who was a coworker at the time who was also part of the military, what I learned was that you respect the you respect the office even if you can't respect the person. Respect the title even if you can't respect the person. Okay? Doesn't have to take anything away from you to allow, right, the person with the title, the right of way to go ahead and move forward. Now, if you find yourself following a fool, then you just choose a different route. You might have to choose a different route, okay? And you might have to just jump out there. But again, be safe. Don't be dead right. And then lastly, right, the fourth way that you need to be cooperative and driving is when it comes to the flow of traffic. Now, of course, it started with talking about traffic. And we use traffic as a metaphor to indicate that it's a heavy flow, but traffic is also how you talk about just the general flow of cars as they're moving, right? But cooperation is necessary to maintain a safe and efficient flow, right? Of those vehicles. And so that might look like you avoiding sudden lane changes, right? Planning ahead, looking in your rear view mirror that's up here, looking at your side view mirrors to see like what's kind of coming behind you, but then also keeping your eyes ahead of you. It really takes a lot of attention and energy in order to keep yourself and the other people safe around you. And so you want to avoid sudden lane changes. You want to avoid sudden stops or braking, right? And you want to maintain a safe following distance to help prevent accidents. Whew. Now, that's what you should do. That's what everybody should do. I think we all know that that doesn't always happen. Okay. Particularly, I don't know if this is just a Charlotte thing, but good grief, the sudden lane changes without any signals, the sudden braking, and the tailgating just seems to be whew, just off the charts here. Oh, yes, y'all. I'm breathing because it drives me crazy. But again, I can only do what I can do, right? And it was so bad. It's so bad in the afternoons that I don't even take the highway anymore. I made the adjustment that I need for my own mental health, for my own sanity. And it takes me in regular traffic conditions, it might take me an extra 10 minutes to take the roads, but it's a much more peaceful drive. It doesn't require as much cooperation or and the belief in the ability of other people drivers. I just enjoy it a little bit more. But sometimes when it comes to life, right, we also need to think about that flow. We need to think about the flow of the relationships that we have. We need to think about the flow of the accomplishments and tasks that we want to get done on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. And how do we manage that traffic flow? It still takes cooperation to manage the flow of our lives, the flow of our days, the flow of our relationships. So we want to avoid those sudden lane changes. Now, I mentioned earlier that sometimes you do need to change lanes and sometimes you do need to get up in other people's business and you need to have people perhaps be up in your business. But we don't want to do that suddenly. Plan for how you're going to transition from where you are now to where you want to be. Right now, if that's in a career, then you want to think about what skills do you need in order to move into that new lane, into that new job, into that new career? Okay. If you want to move locations, let's say you're moving from Cleveland and you're moving to Charlotte, right? You don't necessarily want to drop everything and go right away. That might be some people's testimony, but generally you want to think about how are you going to make that transition? How are you going to help yourself with that flow? You also want to avoid sudden breaks or sudden stops. Now, this is really important, I feel, in relationships. And particularly, again, I'm gonna talk about intimate relationships, loving relationships. The hard stop is difficult, right? But that looks like ghosting. That can look like uh, things that narcissists do, right? That just kind of stop you in your tracks, right? You just stop communicating. You just stop going with the flow. You just break without any warning. Okay. Please don't do that. Not only is that detrimental to the relationships, but that also can be really detrimental to you in general, right? Everything's always context specific because there are also just going to be some times in your life where, yeah, I'm just dropping that. I need to go. I need to stop, and I need to stop this immediately, right? So, really determine for your own flow, right? Where you can make that a smoother transition. And if it's really something that's detrimental, that's harming you, then yes, by all means, pump them brakes. Pump the brakes, stop, get out of it, particularly if you're being harmed physically, if you're being harmed emotionally, if you're being harmed financially, if you're being harmed in any way, then yeah, you may need to just pump them brakes, let that come to a screeching halt and get out. Also, maintaining a safe following distance. How does that pertain to life? Um, when you think about the conversation I had about yielding, we want things to happen right away. We want to push the agenda sometimes, and not just in our relationships, but sometimes even with God, with the God of our understanding. We want to push, right? We want things to happen right now. We want to tailgate the Lord and be like, "You moving too slow. You need to get it moving. Beep beep, honk honk, cuss cuss." Get the thing moving. When really what we need to do is find our space of ease, right? There is an ease and a flow to most of the things that you want to accomplish in life, in love, in business, in relationship, in career. Okay. And you need to determine for yourself, what is that flow? I will tell you this, that generally when you tailgating, you pushing up, you trying to push the agenda, that is usually going to lead to you feeling some extreme anxiety, some depression potentially, some it's anxiety and some panic attacks, right? And you may find yourself not really acting out as your best person when you're trying to push the flow. And before I started just avoiding the highway, I really would just talk to myself, right? Erica, the goal is to get to your destination and to get there safely. And that's the same as life, right? Your goal is to get to your destination and to get there safely, to get there with some joy, to get there with some peace, right? And to get there with some love. Okay. And so the four ways you need cooperation when driving in traffic and when driving this road of life is you need it when you're merging, you need it when you're changing lanes, you need it when you're yielding, and you need it in order to control the flow, right? The flow of traffic that's happening on the road, but more importantly, that merging, changing lanes, yielding, and the traffic flow of life. All right. It's 7:30, family. I thank you for spending this time with me. Of course, I could use your support in my channel. Please hit like, please share, please comment. Please let me know how you're doing. Let me know if there are any particular topics that you'd like to talk about. And let me know how you're doing with managing the cooperation that's needed for the traffic that's happening in your life. I want to hear from you, and I'm here to support you. I love you. This is your sister Erica with your Tuesday sister check-in. Erica Jefferson Rivers. Make it a magnificent week, family. Okay. Till next time. Bye bye.